She was kissing me goodnight in my single room in Alagbado, and at that same moment, on a second phone hidden in her bag, she was texting my other self to confirm their dinner reservation at Echo Hotel. Same woman, same night, 2 phones. I had a private jet on standby, a penthouse in Victoria Island, a company that employs over 3,000 people across 6 states. But none of that could answer the one question that had been eating me alive for 3 years. Would any woman love me if I had nothing? What I found out cracked something open in me, and then it set me completely free. But let me take you back to where it started. A mechanic's yard in Surulere, a broken Toyota, and a man nobody recognized. The first thing you notice about Chukwudi Auto Works on a Wednesday afternoon is the smell. Engine oil, hot metal, the particular thickness of Lagos air when it sits on concrete that has been baking since morning. There is a transistor radio in the corner of the yard, small, dented, balanced on an upturned Milo tin, and it is playing a Burna Boy track that the radio presenter introduced 3 songs ago and never went back to correct. I was flat on my back underneath a 2009 Toyota Camry when I heard the music shift to something older. Something my mother used to play. I stayed under the car a little longer than necessary. My name. My real name. The one on the Forbes feature, the one my PA announces before every board call, is Emeka Okafor. But the man lying on that concrete, wearing a oil-stained gray coverall with the name Chidi stitched above the chest pocket, was nobody. Just another mechanic in a city full of them, invisible in the best possible way. I had been doing this for 11 days. The coverall came from a market stall in Oshodi. The Toyota belonged to a real customer who had no idea the man fixing his brake pads had flown back from London 48 hours earlier. My hands were dirty in a way that took real work to achieve, not the soft, manicured hands I usually hid under the table during negotiations. These were working hands, cracked at the knuckles, black under the nails. I had practiced. After the yard closed each evening, I drove, not in the G-Wagon, not in the Prado, but in a 2006 Corolla I had bought for cash from a man in Iyana Ipaha who asked no questions, 20 minutes north to the single room I was renting in Alagbado. Let me describe that room to you so you understand what I was choosing every night.
The foam mattress sat directly on the floor because there was no bed frame. It had a slight depression in the middle from years of use before I arrived, and it smelled faintly of mentholated spirit no matter how many times I aired it. The ceiling fan, the only fan, wobbled on every rotation, not enough to fall, but enough that you noticed it, especially at 2 a.m. when sleep would not come and the heat was pressing down like a physical weight. There was a plastic bucket in the bathroom for bathing, a bar of key soap on the ledge, a small mirror so scratched it showed you a version of yourself you almost didn't recognize. I stood in front of that mirror on the 11th night and looked at the man looking back at me. Nobody in that building, not my neighbor Mama Tunde who knocked to offer me EBA on my 3rd day, not the landlord who collected cash in a brown envelope every 2 weeks, not a single person on that street knew that yesterday, in this same city, I had signed a deal worth 400 million naira. 400 million. And I was here, on a foam mattress, under a wobbling ceiling fan, eating fried yam I bought from the woman at the junction. By choice. You want to know why? Here is the honest answer. I had stopped trusting the version of myself that wore the suit. Not because the suit was false. I had built everything I owned from nothing, worked every year of my 20s until my eyes hurt, made decisions that kept thousands of families fed. The work was real. The wealth was real. But I could no longer tell what was real about the people around me. And one woman in particular had made that question impossible to ignore. Her name was Adaeze. I first saw her 3 months before the mechanic's yard, at the quarterly shareholder dinner my company hosted at Oriental Hotel in Victoria Island. She arrived the way certain women arrive at those events, not as a guest exactly, but as a statement. Red dress, deliberate posture, the kind of laugh that is designed to travel across a room and land in the right ears. She found me within 20 minutes. I know because I was watching the room the way I always do at those events. Standing slightly apart, glass in hand, cataloging who was talking to whom and why. I saw her check the name tags at the table. I saw her pause at mine. I saw her recalibrate her route through the crowd. By the time she reached me, she was already mid-laugh about something another guest had said, as if our introduction was something that had happened to her rather than something she had engineered. She was good. I will give her that. Her questions that night were not the obvious ones. She did not ask about the company directly. She asked about the industry. She asked what I thought about a particular policy the CBN had released that week. And she had clearly read the policy, because she quoted the section number correctly. She touched my arm twice. Not too long, just enough. Beautiful, calculated, relentless. After she left that night, my head of security pulled me aside. You know she's been to the last 2 events, different +1s both times. I nodded. I had already noticed. What I hadn't decided yet was what to do about it. Because there was a part of me, the part that had been alone in boardrooms and business-class cabins and penthouses for 3 years since the last woman I trusted walked out. That wanted to believe I was reading her wrong. That maybe she was just a woman who was interested. That maybe this time would be different. So instead of closing the door, I opened a different one. I went home that night, called my most trusted personal assistant, and said 4 words I had never said before. Set up the room, but let me be honest with you about something. This was not the first time I had been here, not in this room, but in this feeling. The feeling of watching someone look at you and wondering what exactly they were seeing. 3 years before Adaeze, there was Kioma. Kioma was the kind of woman you believe in completely. Quiet in public, warm in private. She remembered small things. The name of my driver's youngest child. The anniversary of the day I registered my first company. The way I liked my tea. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. I did it simply the way she always said she wanted. No crowd, no performance. Just the 2 of us at her favorite spot in Ikoyi. A ring I had chosen myself without a consultant. She said yes. 6 weeks later, the market moved badly. A combination of foreign exchange instability and a regulatory decision that hit my sector hardest. My net worth dropped by roughly 40% in 3 weeks. It was temporary. I had seen cycles like that before and I knew how to read them. But on paper, for those 3 weeks, the numbers looked frightening. Kioma left on a Thursday. No conversation, no argument to point to. Just a message that said I think we want different things and a silence that never lifted. I found out 4 months later she was engaged to a man in the oil sector whose portfolio had not moved during that same period. She did not take anything when she left. She didn't need to. She had never been staying for me. After Kioma, there was Ngozi, who was warmer and louder and who I told myself was different because at least she was honest. Ngozi stayed. But every few months, there was a new conversation. The plot of land in Lekki, the duplex in her mother's name, the car that was just slightly bigger than the one she currently had. She framed them as plans, as our future. I tried to see it that way. But one evening, after the 4th conversation in a year about a building that would be in her name, I sat across from her at dinner and I asked myself a question I could not answer. If I lost everything tomorrow, not temporarily but completely, would she still be sitting in that chair? I already knew. I paid the bill. I drove home alone. I sat in a penthouse worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, and I thought, I do not know if anyone in my life is here for me or here for this. I started to wonder if I was a man or a transaction. That is the wound Adaeze walked into when she found me at that shareholder dinner. She didn't know it was there, but I did. And this time, before I let anyone close enough to use it, I needed the truth first, whatever it cost me. So I set up the room, and I waited to see who she really was. She came to the room on a Saturday. I had invited her the week before, casually, The way Chidi the mechanic would. No restaurant booking, no driver, no agenda. Just, come and see where I live. I wanted to watch her walk through that door and see what her face did before she remembered to control it. She arrived at 4 p.m. in an Uber she had ordered from 2 streets away. I noticed that detail. The 2 streets. She didn't want the driver knowing exactly where she was going. I filed it quietly and said nothing. When she stepped through the door, her eyes moved fast. I watched them travel, the foam mattress on the floor, the cracked paint above the window, the single plastic chair, the curtain that didn't quite reach the rod on the left side. The ceiling fan was doing its usual wobble. The room smelled of the fried plantain I had made that morning because I wanted the space to feel lived in and real. Her face went through 3 expressions in under 4 seconds. The first was shock. Genuine, unguarded, the kind that happens before the brain catches up with the eyes. When she stepped through the door, her eyes moved fast. I watched them travel. The foam mattress on the floor, the cracked paint above the window, the single plastic chair, the curtain that didn't quite reach the rod on the left side. The ceiling fan was doing its usual wobble. The room smelled of the fried plantain I had made that morning because I wanted the space to feel lived in and real. Her face went through 3 expressions in under 4 seconds. The first was shock, genuine, unguarded, the kind that happens before the brain catches up with the eyes. The second was something harder. A brief calculation, like a woman repricing something she had already decided to buy. The third was the performance, a slow smile, warm, practiced. "It's cozy," she said. That was the word she chose. Cozy. I handed her a bottle of cold water and watched her sit on the plastic chair rather than the mattress, keeping the hem of her dress away from the floor with 2 careful fingers she probably didn't know she was using. We talked for an hour. She was good at talking, asking questions that sounded like interest, laughing at the right moments, touching my hand across the small side table I used as a dining surface. She ate the fried plantain I offered. She complimented it. She was performing acceptance. I could see the effort underneath it, the way you can sometimes see the frame behind a canvas if you stand at the right angle. And then she excused herself to use the bathroom. The walls in that building are thin. That is not a metaphor. It is a structural fact about properties built quickly in neighborhoods where nobody is checking. I could hear Mama Tunde's television through one wall and the sound of running water from the apartment above on a normal evening. So when Adaeze's voice dropped to that particular register, low, deliberate, sweetened in a way that was different from the voice she used with me, I heard every word. "Yes, I'm free Saturday. Echo Hotel is fine. You know I don't like to keep you waiting." A pause. "Of course. You know I only want you." She came back into the room 2 minutes later. Sat down. Picked up the conversation exactly where we had left it, as if she had simply gone to fix her lipstick. She smiled at me. I smiled back, and I thought, there it is. Not anger. Not yet. Just the cold, clarifying feeling of a man who suspected the truth and has now seen it written plainly in front of him. I said nothing that evening. I walked her to the gate when she left, watched her Uber pull away, and stood on that unpaved street in Alagbado until the taillights disappeared. Then I went back inside. I sat on the foam mattress. The ceiling fan wobbled overhead, and I began to plan. I want you to understand something. I was not angry that she was playing both sides. I was angry because she was good at it, because if the walls had been thicker, if I hadn't been listening for exactly this, I might have believed her. And that told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been going on. 3 weeks passed. I watched. I documented. I said nothing. I watched her check her second phone under the table when she thought I was looking at the television. I watched her step outside to take calls she described afterward as her cousin, or work stress, or just a friend. I watched her perform comfort in that single room with the dedication of a woman who had decided the investment was still worth making. And then one evening, when the ceiling fan was doing its wobble and the street outside had gone quiet, I put down my phone and I looked at her. "Who were you calling that night in the bathroom?" She didn't miss a beat. "My sister." "Why?" "Which sister drives a G-Wagon to Echo Hotel?" The room went very still. I watched her face move through the options. Confusion, then denial, then a brief assessment of how much I actually knew. I kept my voice completely flat. No anger, no accusation in the tone. Just the quiet of a man who has already finished grieving and is now simply closing a door. "Adaeze, how long have you been seeing the CEO of Okafor Holdings?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "He sent you flowers last Tuesday, ordered from a shop on Admiralty Way. You sent a voice note at 11 p.m. thanking him. You called him your future in a message you typed while you were sitting next to me on this mattress." The denial left her face like air leaving a room. What replaced it was something more honest than anything she had shown me in 3 weeks. Pure calculation. A woman repricing the situation in real time, deciding that performance was no longer the most efficient strategy. She sat up straighter. "So what?" The warmth was completely gone now. "You're a mechanic, Chidi. What exactly did you think was going to happen here?" She said it the way people say things they have been thinking for a long time and finally no longer see a reason to keep inside. There was no cruelty in her voice, just practicality. As if I was a child who had misread a situation that should have been obvious to everyone. I let the silence sit for a long moment. Then I said the only true thing I had said to her since we met. "I just wanted to know if one person could love me without knowing what I'm worth." She stared at me. I don't think she understood what she was hearing. I don't think she knew yet what those words would cost her. She picked up her bag and left. I sat in the quiet of that room and I did not move for a long time. She thought that was the end of it. A mechanic with feelings. A lesson learned. A door closed. She had no idea what was coming. The door closed behind her. Not a slam. That would have meant something. Anger, emotion, a feeling worth expressing. It was worse than a slam. It was the quiet, indifferent click of a woman who had already moved on before she reached the gate. I sat on the foam mattress and I did not move. The ceiling fan wobbled overhead. That same uneven rotation I had stopped noticing after the first week, but could suddenly hear again now, loud in the silence she left behind. The street outside had gone to its usual evening rhythm. A generator starting somewhere down the road. Children being called in for dinner. A woman's voice rising and falling in a conversation I couldn't make out. Normal life, continuing without me. My real phone was on the side table. The one nobody in this building knew existed. I picked it up and looked at the screen. 7 missed calls from my PA, 2 calendar alerts, a board meeting at 9 a.m. and another at 2 p.m. the following day. A message from my pilot confirming the jet was ready for the Abuja trip on Thursday. 400 million naira, 3,000 employees, a penthouse in Victoria Island with a view that had made grown men go quiet the first time they saw it. I put the phone face down on the mattress, and I sat in the particular silence of a man who has everything and cannot feel any of it. I thought about Kioma, the way she said yes that evening in Ikoyi, how completely I had believed her, how long I had carried the embarrassment of believing her, not the heartbreak, the embarrassment, the feeling of a man who could read a boardroom in 60 seconds and could not read the woman sitting across from him at dinner. Maybe she was right to leave, I thought. Not Kioma specifically, all of them. Maybe there was something in me, something in the version of me that needed to be loved without the money, without the title, without the company. That was simply too much to ask for, too needy, too hidden beneath too many layers to be worth the excavation. Maybe this is just what love looks like for men like me. A test nobody wants to pass. The ceiling fan wobbled. The generator down the road hummed. I lay back on the foam mattress and stared at the ceiling, and I let myself feel the full weight of it, not as a billionaire in a disguise, not as a man running an experiment, but just as a man. 38 years old, alone in a room in Alagbado, wondering if the problem had always been him. The door was closed. The room was quiet. The fan wobbled. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check the markets or answer the missed calls or distract myself with the comfortable noise of productivity. I just lay there and let it hurt. I don't know how long I stayed like that. What I know is that when my phone lit up again, it wasn't my PA, it was Seun. And what he said changed everything. The phone lit up at 10:47 p.m. Not my PA, not the board, not the pilot confirming Thursday. Seun and I had been friends since university, the kind of friend who says very little but watches everything. He had known about the experiment from the beginning. Not the details, but enough. He was the only person I had told. I picked up on the second ring. Emeka. His voice had that particular flatness it gets when he is delivering something he wishes he didn't have to. She posted a photo. Tonight. With him. I didn't speak. She tagged the location. It's your company's shareholder dinner, the private one next Friday. The guest list that only goes to board members and senior partners. A pause. The one she got access to through you. I sat up slowly on the foam mattress. She's going with him, Seun said, as his guest, to your event. Emeka, she's been playing this the whole time. You were never the target. You were the door. I said nothing for a long moment. I'll see you Friday, I said, and I ended the call. I did not break anything. I did not raise my voice to the empty room. I simply sat in the quiet and let the full shape of it settle. Not the betrayal, which I had already made my peace with, but the audacity, the architecture of it. She had not just been using me. She had been using Chidi the mechanic as a ladder to climb toward Emeka Okafor the billionaire, not knowing they were the same man. The irony was almost beautiful. I picked up my real phone and made one call to my PA. The Friday dinner. I'll be opening with remarks. Prepare the podium. Friday evening. I arrived early, suit pressed, my name on every place card at the head table. My face on the event banner that stretched across the back wall of the ballroom, Okafor Holdings Annual Shareholder Dinner, hosted by Emeka Okafor, CEO. I was standing at the podium doing a sound check when I heard the room shift behind me. That particular shift, a murmur, a hesitation, the sound of social calculation happening at speed, that I recognized. I did not turn around immediately. I finished the sound check. I accepted a glass of water from the event coordinator. I straightened my cufflinks. Then I turned. Adaeze was standing at the entrance in a gold dress, her hand resting on the arm of a man I recognized, a mid-level investor who had been trying to position himself near my board for 2 years. He was looking around the room with the confidence of a man who believed he had arrived somewhere important. She was not looking around the room. She was looking at me. I watched her face go through the same sequence I had watched in the single room in Alagbado. Shock, then recovery, then something that had nowhere left to go. Because this time, there was no third expression, no performance available. Her eyes moved from my face to the banner behind me, to the place cards on the table, to the banner again. The man beside her leaned toward her slowly. You know the host? She said nothing. I held her gaze for exactly 1 moment, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just with the clear, steady look of a man who has finished being a question someone else gets to answer. Then I turned to the room. I gripped the sides of the podium lightly and I spoke. Good evening. Before we begin, I want to say something that has nothing to do with quarterly returns. The room settled. I spent 6 weeks recently learning something I think everyone in this room already knows. Who you are when you think no one important is watching is the only version of you that's real. Silence. Then the kind of applause that starts slowly because people are still processing what they just heard. I did not look at her again. I didn't need to. By the time the applause had built to its full weight, I heard the soft sound of heels moving toward the exit. Quick, certain, not stopping. She was gone before it ended. I never saw Adaeze again after that evening. I don't know what she told the man whose arm she arrived on. I don't know what story she built around what happened in that room. What I know is this. I went back to the single room in Alagbado one last time the following week. I paid the landlord for the remaining month. I folded the coverall with the name Chidi stitched above the pocket, and I left it on the plastic chair. I took nothing else. I didn't need to. I had already found what I came for. Hit like and subscribe to join our